billionaire CEO left me for being barren. I returned as his doctor with his twins. The man who called me worthless is dying on my table. His heart, the one that never belonged to me, is failing. And I'm the only surgeon in this hospital who can save him. Should I? Dr. Naomi Brooks, 34 years old, stood outside operating room 3, her hands already steady despite the chaos erupting in her chest. The monitor displayed his face, older now, with silver threading through his dark hair, stress lines carving into features that once smiled at her with what she believed was love. Troy Morrison. The name on the chart read Harrison Whitmore, but she knew better. He'd changed his surname after some corporate merger, adopting his maternal grandfather's name for business purposes. But those steel gray eyes? That sharp jawline? The arrogant tilt of his chin, even in unconsciousness? That was Troy, the man who destroyed her. 9 years. 9 years she'd spent transforming herself from a discarded wife into one of the nation's most brilliant cardiac surgeons. 9 years proving that the woman deemed defective could save lives others had given up on. 9 years raising twins alone, children whose existence remained her most closely guarded secret. Now fate had placed him on her operating table, his life literally in her hands. Dr. Brooks. The surgical resident's voice cut through her spiral. We need your decision. His vitals are dropping. Naomi's mind flashed back to the night her marriage died, the night she learned exactly what she was worth to the man who'd vowed to love her forever. 9 years earlier, she'd been sitting in their penthouse apartment staring at another negative pregnancy test when Troy walked in from his office. At 33, he was already a legend in the financial world, ruthless, brilliant, achingly handsome. He'd built Morrison Capital into a billion-dollar empire through sheer force of will and strategic genius. But that night, his cold gray eyes held no warmth as he looked at his wife. I want a divorce. 4 words. No warning. No conversation. Just 4 words that detonated their 3-year marriage like a controlled demolition. Naomi had stared at him, the pregnancy test still trembling in her hands. What? I need children, Naomi. Heirs. My grandmother is 78 and wants to see the family line continue. He'd paused, adjusting his cufflinks, that damned gesture that always preceded something cruel. You've had 3 years. It's not happening. We can try other options, she pleaded, her voice breaking. Adoption, surrogacy, more treatments. I don't want other options. I want a wife who can give me what I need. The clinical coldness in his voice had been worse than anger would have been. He'd spoken about their marriage, about her, like she was a failed business investment. Troy, please. Vivian Ashford is expecting my child. The words hit like a physical blow. Naomi felt the air leave her lungs. We've been seeing each other for 6 months, he continued, his tone matter-of-fact, as if discussing a merger. I'm marrying her as soon as our divorce is final. Vivian Ashford, a socialite from old money. Everything Troy's family had wanted him to marry in the first place. Beautiful, connected, from the right pedigree. And apparently fertile. You had an affair because I couldn't get pregnant fast enough. Naomi's voice was barely a whisper. Troy met her eyes without flinching. I had an affair because I needed to know if the problem was you or me. He picked up his briefcase, preparing to leave. Turns out it was you. Those words, cold, calculated, devastating, shattered something fundamental inside her. You tested me? Like livestock. I did what was necessary. Vivian proved she could give me what I need. You proved you couldn't. He headed toward the door, then paused. My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow. I'll be generous in the settlement. You'll need it to start over. I don't want your money. You'll take it. Consider it compensation for your time. He left, walked out of their apartment, their marriage, their life together, and drove straight to Vivian's penthouse where he spent the night celebrating their future. Naomi sat in that cavernous apartment until dawn, staring at the negative pregnancy test that had sealed her fate. By morning, she'd packed 2 suitcases and disappeared from Troy Morrison's glittering world. She crashed on her best friend's couch, worked double shifts at a medical clinic, saved every penny for the medical school application she'd always dreamed of pursuing. And then, 6 weeks after signing divorce papers in a sterile conference room, she discovered she was pregnant. Not just pregnant, carrying twins. Back to the present day. Dr. Brooks. The resident's urgent voice snapped her back. He's coding. Naomi looked at Troy's unconscious face on the monitor one last time. Then she made her decision. Prep or 3. I'm scrubbing in. Whatever he'd done to her, whatever pain he'd caused, she'd take an oath. But as she walked toward the surgical suite, one thought burned through her mind. When you wake up, Troy Morrison, you're going to see the woman you called worthless standing over you. And then you're going to learn about the children you never knew existed. Have you ever been thrown away by someone who was supposed to love you forever? If you are liking this story, hit that like button. Naomi's journey is just beginning, and trust me, karma is about to serve the coldest dish. Before we dive deeper, I would like to welcome you back to Mr. William Chronicles, where we tell stories that make you feel something real. If you're ready for a powerful tale of heartbreak, transformation, and a mother who proved that worthless women can save lives, hit that subscribe button right now, slam the notification bell, and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. 6 weeks after signing divorce papers that labeled her a failure, Naomi Brooks sat in a cramped bathroom in her best friend's apartment, staring at 2 pink lines that shouldn't exist. Pregnant. She laughed, a hollow, broken sound that turned into sobs. The irony was almost poetic. 3 years of trying, countless fertility treatments, Troy's accusations of being defective, and now, 6 weeks after he'd thrown her away for being barren, her body decided to work. But this wasn't just one baby. Twins, the ultrasound technician confirmed 2 weeks later. Congratulations. Congratulations. As if being pregnant, alone, and broke in San Francisco was something to celebrate. Naomi left the clinic and made a decision that would define the next decade of her life. Troy Morrison would never know. He'd made it clear what she was worth to him. He'd already chosen Vivian Ashford and their legitimate heir. These babies, her babies, deserved better than a father who viewed children as business assets. She called her mother that night. Mom, I need help. Medical school, while pregnant with twins, should have been impossible. Most days, it felt impossible. Naomi attended lectures with morning sickness, so severe she kept a trash can beside her desk. She studied anatomy while her belly swelled, her classmates whispering behind her back about the divorced girl who got knocked up. She took her first-year exams at 7 months pregnant, her twins pressing against her lungs until she could barely breathe. Her mother, Patricia Brooks, arrived from Detroit 3 weeks before Naomi's due date. She'd sold her house, packed up 58 years of life, and moved across the country without hesitation. You're my daughter, Patricia had said simply. Where else would I be? The twins came early, 6 weeks premature. Naomi went into labor during a midnight study session, her water breaking while she memorized cardiac anatomy. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd one day become a heart surgeon. Austin and Maya Brooks were born at 2:47 and 2:51 a.m. respectively. 3 pounds each. Tiny, fragile, perfect. Naomi held them in the NICU, these impossibly small humans with Troy's steel gray eyes and her determination, and made a promise. I will give you everything. You'll never feel unwanted. Never feel like you're not enough. The first 2 years were a blur of sleepless nights and relentless pressure. Naomi worked 3 jobs, medical transcription from home, weekend shifts at a walk-in clinic, and research assistant work for extra cash. Her mother handled childcare, sacrificing her own retirement to raise her grandchildren, while Naomi chased an impossible dream. There were nights Naomi studied while breastfeeding, medical textbooks propped against nursing pillows. Mornings she survived on 3 hours of sleep and pure caffeine. Afternoons she rushed from clinical rotations to daycare pickup, still wearing scrubs stained with other people's blood. Student loans piled up. Medical bills from the premature birth crushed her. The twins needed everything: formula, diapers, clothes they'd outgrow in weeks. But Naomi refused to break. She graduated medical school, ranked 3rd in her class. The twins were 2 years old, attending her graduation ceremony in matching outfits Patricia had sewn by hand. The photo from that day, Naomi in her cap and gown, exhausted but triumphant, holding 2 toddlers, became her phone wallpaper. Her reminder that impossible things were possible. Surgical residency was even more brutal. 80-hour weeks, 36-hour shifts, the constant pressure of holding human lives in sleep-deprived hands. Naomi missed the twins' first day of preschool because she was in surgery. Missed Austin's first soccer game because she was covering the ER. Missed Maya's first art show because a patient crashed during her shift. But she never missed bedtime stories. Never missed the important conversations. Never let them doubt, even for a moment, that they were loved beyond measure. "Where's our daddy?" Austin asked when he was 5, noticing other kids had fathers at school events. Naomi had prepared for this question. Your daddy isn't able to be part of our lives. But that doesn't mean anything about you. You're wanted. You're loved. You're everything. Did he not want us? Maya's artistic intuition cut straight to the wound. He doesn't know about you, Naomi said honestly. And that's his loss, because you two are the most amazing humans on this planet. It was enough. For then. By the time the twins turned 6, Naomi had completed her residency in record time. Her skill with cardiac surgery was becoming legendary. Steady hands, innovative techniques, an almost supernatural ability to stay calm during crisis. At 32, she was recruited by San Francisco Memorial Hospital as an attending surgeon. At 33, she was leading the cardiac surgery department. At 34, she became the youngest chief of cardiac surgery in the hospital's history. Austin and Maya thrived. Austin developed Troy's analytical brilliance, devouring books on business and technology. Maya inherited artistic talent from Naomi's father, painting emotional landscapes that made adults weep. They were brilliant, kind, well-adjusted children who'd grown up watching their mother prove that being underestimated was just motivation to exceed every expectation. Then, 2 years ago, Patricia Brooks died suddenly. A stroke, quick and unexpected. Naomi lost her mother, her support system, her rock. The twins lost their grandmother, the only father figure they'd really known. For months, Naomi felt like she was drowning again, single parenting while managing a demanding surgical career. But she survived. Because that's what she did. She survived. She adapted. She conquered. 9 years of building an unshakable life. 9 years of proving everyone wrong. 9 years of becoming someone Troy Morrison wouldn't even recognize. And then his name appeared on her patient chart. And everything she'd built was about to be tested in ways she never imagined. 4 hours. 4 hours of standing over Troy Morrison's open chest, her hands steady as she rerouted blocked arteries and gave his failing heart new pathways for blood to flow. 4 hours of professional detachment while her mind screamed with memories she'd spent 9 years burying. "Suction," Naomi commanded, her voice calm despite the chaos in her head. The surgical resident complied immediately, clearing the field so she could work. Troy's heart lay exposed before her, literally and metaphorically. The organ that had never truly belonged to her, now completely at her mercy. The irony is almost poetic, she thought, placing another bypass graft with precision that had taken years to perfect. The Barren wife fixing his broken heart. "BP is stabilizing," the anesthesiologist announced. "You're doing great, Dr. Brooks." Great. She was doing great. The woman Troy had discarded like defective merchandise was now the only thing standing between him and death. "How's the graft taking?" she asked, her eyes never leaving her work. "Perfectly. Your technique is flawless." Flawless. That's what 9 years of relentless determination bought you. The ability to save the life of the man who destroyed yours without your hands shaking even once. But her mind? Her mind was a war zone. Every suture brought back memories. Troy's voice calling her Barren. His clinical tone explaining that Vivian was pregnant with his child. The way he'd looked at her like she was a failed investment rather than the woman who'd loved him with everything she had. "Final anastomosis complete," Naomi announced, her voice steady. beginning closure. As she worked, she allowed herself one moment of bitter satisfaction. Troy Morrison, the man who'd built an empire on control, who'd orchestrated every aspect of his life with ruthless precision, had no control over this. His life depended entirely on the skill of the woman he deemed worthless. How does it feel, Troy? Being completely at someone else's mercy? Vitals are strong across the board, the resident reported. Dr. Brooks, this was incredible. You saved his life. Save his life. She'd saved the life of the man who'd killed something fundamental inside her. The man who had 2 children he didn't know existed, growing up brilliant and beautiful just miles from his penthouse. Austin with his steel gray eyes and analytical mind. Troy's mirror image at 8 years old. Maya with her artistic soul and that stubborn Morrison jawline. Troy's daughter, who'd never know her father. Let's get him to recovery, Naomi said, stripping off her surgical gloves. Monitor him closely. Any irregularities, page me immediately. As the surgical team wheeled Troy toward the ICU, Naomi stood alone in the operating room, finally allowing her professional mask to slip. Her hands started shaking, not from fear or doubt, but from the sheer weight of what had just happened. She'd saved him. Despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal and years of struggling alone, she'd saved his life. Because that's who she was now. Not the broken girl he discarded, but Dr. Naomi Brooks, a surgeon who honored her oath even when every personal instinct screamed to walk away. 3 days later, Troy Morrison woke slowly, consciousness returning in fragments. Beeping monitors, antiseptic smell, the dull ache in his chest that told him he'd undergone major surgery. He opened his eyes, expecting his secretary or perhaps Vivian. Instead, he saw her. Dr. Naomi Brooks stood at the foot of his bed, reviewing his chart with professional detachment. She looked nothing like the woman he'd divorced 9 years ago. Gone was the uncertain young wife who'd cried over negative pregnancy tests. In her place stood a confident surgeon with steel in her spine and purpose in every movement. She wore her white coat like armor, her dark hair pulled back severely, her brown eyes cold as she finally looked up and met his gaze. "You're awake," she said, her tone clinical. "That's good. Your surgery was successful." Troy stared, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "Naomi." "Dr. Brooks," she corrected sharply. "I'm your cardiac surgeon. You suffered a massive heart attack 3 days ago. I performed a triple bypass. Your prognosis is good if you follow post-operative protocol." You're a doctor?" His voice was rough from the breathing tube, but the disbelief was clear. "I'm a surgeon, chief of cardiac surgery, actually." She made a note on his chart without looking at him. "One of the best in the country, which is fortunate for you considering the complexity of your case." Troy tried to sit up, but pain shot through his chest. "How? When did I become a surgeon?" Naomi's smile was cold. "After you threw me away for being defective, I decided to prove I could save lives instead of just failing to create them. Turns out I'm quite good at it." The words hit like physical blows. Troy saw the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd destroyed, standing over him with the power to end his life or save it. And she'd chosen to save it. "Naomi, Dr. Brooks," she insisted again. "Our personal history is irrelevant. You're my patient. Nothing more." She moved toward the door, then paused. "You'll need 6 weeks minimum for recovery. No stress, no work, strict diet and exercise protocol. I'll have the cardiac rehabilitation team contact you." "Wait," Troy called out, desperation creeping into his voice. "Can we talk? Really talk? There's so much I need to say. There's nothing to discuss beyond your medical care, Mr. Morrison." She opened the door. "Or should I say Mr. Whitmore? Interesting name change. Business merger, I assume." Before he could respond, she was gone. Troy lay in his hospital bed, his mind reeling. The woman he'd called Barren, the woman he'd discarded like damaged goods, had just saved his life. And she'd done it with the same cold, clinical detachment he'd shown her 9 years ago. Karma, he thought, is a surgeon with steady hands and a long memory. What would you do if the person who destroyed you needed you to save their life? Drop your answer in the comments, because what Naomi does next will blow your mind. And if you're loving this story, subscribe so you never miss an ending this good. Troy Morrison spent 3 days in the cardiac intensive care unit, and every time Dr. Naomi Brooks entered his room, the professional distance between them felt like a chasm he couldn't cross. She was efficient, thorough, and completely detached. She checked his vitals, adjusted his medications, and answered his questions with clinical precision. But she never stayed longer than necessary, never met his eyes for more than a second, never acknowledged the history that hung between them like smoke. On the 4th day, Troy was cleared for supervised walks around the hospital floor. Against his better judgment and his nurse's explicit instructions, he found himself wandering beyond the cardiac wing. He told himself he was just exploring, getting his strength back. But the truth was darker, more desperate. He needed to understand who Naomi had become. The woman who'd saved his life was a stranger wearing his ex-wife's face. That's when he saw them. The family lounge on the 3rd floor was mostly empty, except for a woman and 2 children. Troy stopped in the doorway, his breath catching for reasons that had nothing to do with his recent surgery. 2 children, a boy and a girl, both around 8 years old, sat at a table doing homework. The boy worked through math problems with intense concentration, his dark hair falling across his forehead. The girl sketched in a notebook, her tongue poking out slightly as she focused. And the woman helping them, Naomi. Troy's heart monitor beeped faster as his pulse elevated. He should leave. He knew he should leave. But something kept him frozen in place, watching this impossible scene. "Mom, I don't understand this problem," the boy said, his voice carrying that distinctive tone of frustration that came from being smart enough to know you should understand something but not quite getting it yet. "Mom." Troy's world tilted on its axis. "Let me see, Austin." Naomi leaned over, her voice patient and warm in a way it never was with Troy anymore. "Okay, so if you have 3 variables, Austin." The boy's name was Austin. Troy studied him with growing disbelief. Dark hair like his own. That same intense focus he recognized from childhood photos. And when the boy looked up at his mother with a question, steel gray eyes. Troy's exact eyes stared back from an 8-year-old face. "Maya, that's beautiful," Naomi was saying to the girl. "Is this for your art class?" "It's for the hospital art therapy program," Maya replied. Mrs. Chun said kids who are scared about being sick might feel better if they see happy art on the walls. Maya. The girl had softer features, more of Naomi's bone structure, but when she smiled, Troy's smile, his mother's smile, the same slightly crooked grin that had charmed investors and built an empire. His hands started shaking. The timeline clicked into place with brutal clarity. 8 years old. Naomi had filed for divorce 9 years ago, which meant, "Austin, Maya, I need to run down to the pharmacy," Naomi said, gathering her things. "Stay here and finish your homework. Don't leave this room, understand?" "Yes, Mom," they chorused. Troy watched Naomi leave, and as she passed the doorway, where he stood partially hidden, her eyes met his for a split second. She knew he was there. She knew he'd seen them. And the look on her face, protective fury mixed with something like fear, told him everything. Troy waited until Naomi returned. When she entered the family lounge, he was sitting in the hallway outside, his hospital gown and four-pole making him look vulnerable and pale. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "I'm with my children. Our children." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Naomi's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. "They're mine, aren't they?" Troy's voice cracked. "Austin and Maya. They're my children." "They're my children," Naomi corrected, her voice low and fierce. "I raised them. I fed them, clothed them, sat up with them through fevers and nightmares. I put myself through medical school while pregnant. I gave birth to them 6 weeks premature, alone in a hospital, scared out of my mind. They're mine. But they're—" Troy struggled to form words. "You were pregnant. When you left me, you were pregnant with my children." "I found out 6 weeks after our divorce was finalized," Naomi said coldly. "After you'd already moved on with Vivian. After you'd already made it clear what you thought of me and my defective body." Troy felt like he'd been punched. You should have told me. Why? Naomi's laugh was bitter. So you could reject them like you rejected me? So you could run another fertility test to make sure they were genetically worthy of the Morrison name. That's not fair. Fair. Naomi's voice rose, then dropped as she remembered her children were nearby. You want to talk about fair? You threw me away like garbage because I couldn't get pregnant fast enough for your timeline. And 6 weeks later, I discovered I was carrying twins. Twins, Troy. The children you wanted so desperately were inside me the whole time you were sleeping with Vivian Ashford. The words hit Troy like physical blows. He'd thrown away his family while it was already growing inside the woman he'd called Barren. I want to meet them, he said desperately. Please, Naomi. I want to know them. Why? So you can disrupt their lives? So you can hurt them the way you hurt me? I would never hurt them. You said you'd never hurt me either. Naomi's eyes glistened with old pain. You promised to love me in sickness and health, remember? Those vows meant nothing when I couldn't give you what you wanted fast enough. Troy tried to stand, but his legs were weak. I was wrong. About everything. I was young and stupid and scared, and I let my family's expectations. Save it, Naomi cut him off. I don't need your apologies or explanations. My children have a good life. They're happy, well-adjusted, brilliant kids who've never felt unwanted, because I made sure of it. I won't let you make them feel like they're not enough. They're my children too. You have no rights where they're concerned. Naomi's voice was absolute. You gave up those rights when you called me Barren and walked away. Those children don't know you exist, and I plan to keep it that way. Naomi, please. It's Dr. Brooks, and this conversation is over. She turned toward the family lounge, then paused. If you come near my children again, I'll file a restraining order. And trust me, Troy, I'm not the powerless woman you threw away anymore. I have resources. I have reputation. And I have a protective fury that would destroy you in court. She walked into the family lounge, leaving Troy sitting in the hallway, his heart monitor beeping erratically as the full weight of what he'd lost crashed down on him. He'd wanted children, had destroyed his marriage for them, and they'd been there all along, growing up brilliant and beautiful without him, raised by the woman whose strength he'd never fully appreciated until it was too late. 2 weeks after his discharge, Troy Morrison did something he'd never done in his entire corporate career. He begged. He'd sent flowers to Naomi's office. She returned them. He'd written letters explaining, apologizing, pleading. She never responded. He'd tried calling. She blocked his number. Finally, he showed up at San Francisco Memorial during her lunch break, looking thinner and older than he had before the surgery, and waited in the cafeteria until she appeared. You're harassing me, Naomi said flatly, not bothering to sit down. I'm asking for a chance, Troy replied. One conversation. One meeting with Austin and Maya. Just let me explain who I am. You're a stranger who shares their DNA. Nothing more. I'm their father. You're a sperm donor. Naomi's voice was cold. Fathers show up. Fathers sacrifice. Fathers put their children's needs above their own egos. You did none of those things. Troy flinched but pressed on. Because I didn't know they existed. If I had known. You would have what? Welcomed the children of the woman you called defective? Introduced your barren ex-wife's pregnancy to your new society bride. Naomi shook her head. Don't rewrite history to make yourself feel better. One meeting, Troy said quietly. Supervised. In public. You can be there the entire time. If they hate me, if it goes badly, I'll walk away. But please, Naomi, they deserve to know their father exists. Something in his voice, genuine desperation rather than entitled demand, made Naomi pause. She studied him for a long moment. The man before her looked broken in a way that had nothing to do with his recent heart surgery. This wasn't the arrogant CEO who dismissed her. This was a man confronting the magnitude of what he'd lost. One meeting, she said finally. Coffee shop. Saturday afternoon. 2 hours maximum. And Troy, if you hurt them, if you make them feel unwanted or inadequate in any way, I will make sure you never see them again. Do you understand? I understand. The coffee shop in Golden Gate Park was neutral territory, public enough to be safe, quiet enough for conversation. Troy arrived 30 minutes early, his hands shaking as he rehearsed what to say. How did you introduce yourself to children who'd grown up without you? Children who existed because of your biggest mistake. When Naomi arrived with Austin and Maya, Troy's breath caught. Seeing them in the hospital had been shocking. But seeing them here, in daylight, dressed in normal clothes and looking so alive and real, it was overwhelming. Austin wore a science camp t-shirt and carried a book about robotics. Maya had paint stains on her jeans and a sketchbook tucked under her arm. They both studied Troy with intelligent curiosity. Kids, this is Mr. Whitmore, Naomi said carefully. He's someone I used to know. Someone important. Hi, Austin said, extending his hand with formal politeness. Nice to meet you. Troy shook his son's hand, fighting back tears. It's very nice to meet you too, Austin. Are you a doctor like Mom? Maya asked, tilting her head in a gesture Troy recognized from his own mother. No, I run a technology company. We make software that helps businesses work better. That sounds boring, Maya said with 8-year-old honesty, and Troy laughed, a genuine, delighted sound that made Naomi's chest tighten. For the next hour, Troy talked with his children about their lives, their interests, their dreams. He learned that Austin wanted to be an engineer, that Maya painted emotional landscapes, that they were both honor students who loved their school. He was careful, gentle, asking questions, and listening with a focus he usually reserved for billion-dollar negotiations. And slowly, the children warmed to him. You look familiar, Austin said suddenly. Like someone I've seen before. Naomi tensed, but Troy handled it smoothly. I have one of those faces. Common features. No, it's something else, Maya added, studying him with artistic precision. Your eyes. They're the same color as ours. The observation hung in the air. Naomi was about to intervene when Troy spoke. You're very observant, Maya. Has anyone ever told you that artists see things other people miss? The redirection worked. Maya beamed, launching into a description of her latest painting project. As the meeting ended, Austin surprised everyone by asking, Can we see you again? Troy looked at Naomi, hope and fear warring in his expression. We'll see, Naomi said diplomatically. That evening, Troy received a call from Vivian Ashford, now Vivian Morrison, his wife of 6 years. Where have you been? She demanded. You've missed 3 board meetings and the charity gala planning session. I've been recovering from major heart surgery, Vivian. That was weeks ago. The doctor cleared you for light activity. Troy looked at the photos he'd secretly taken of Austin and Maya at the coffee shop. Innocent shots of them laughing, talking, being the incredible children Naomi had raised alone. Vivian, we need to talk. About what? About our marriage. About the fact that we don't love each other. About the life we've been pretending to live. Silence. Then, Troy, I'm 6 months pregnant with your child. Whatever midlife crisis you're having. It's not a crisis. It's clarity. Troy's voice was steady. I've spent 6 years married to someone I don't love, building a life based on social expectations rather than real connection. I'm done pretending. You're divorcing me? While I'm pregnant. I'll support you financially. I'll be involved in the baby's life. But I can't stay married to you, Vivian. It's not fair to either of us. This is about her, isn't it? Vivian's voice turned sharp. That doctor. Your ex-wife. This is about me finally understanding what I threw away 9 years ago. Troy just blew up his entire life for a second chance. Do you think people can really change? Or is Naomi setting herself up for heartbreak? Comment, trust, if you think he deserves forgiveness. Or comment, run, if Naomi should protect her heart. Don't forget to share this with someone who believes in second chances. Vivian was not planning to go quietly. The first week after Troy announced the divorce, she flooded his phone with ultrasound photos and messages. Your son kicked today. Don't you want to feel it? This baby needs its father. When guilt didn't work, she escalated. She showed up at board meetings, her pregnant belly prominently displayed, forcing sympathetic investors to question Troy's judgment. Divorcing your pregnant wife? What kind of man does that? Then she turned her attention To Naomi. "I know about the twins," Vivian hissed during a tense hospital encounter. "And I know powerful people on the hospital board. One word from me about your conflict of interest in treating my husband, and your career is over." Naomi met her gaze steadily. "Try it. My surgical record speaks for itself. Please, dear, I do not have any problem with you. Take your issues to your husband and leave me out of it." The divorce took 8 months, brutal, public, and expensive. Vivian leaked stories to tabloids. Billionaire abandons pregnant wife for ex. She demanded full custody, threatened exposés, weaponized every social connection. But Troy held firm. He agreed to generous child support, shared custody, and a settlement that left Vivian financially secure. What he wouldn't compromise on was his future, and his second chance with the family he should have chosen first. 8 months after that supervised coffee shop meeting, Troy Morrison sat on Naomi's front porch, watching Austin teach Maya coding basics on a laptop while Christopher, his 7-year-old son with Vivian, sketched quietly beside them. The blended family scene still felt surreal. Miraculous, even. "They're good together," Naomi said, settling into the chair beside him with 2 mugs of coffee. "Christopher adores them," Troy replied softly. "He told Vivian last week that he wishes we could all live in one house." Naomi's expression softened. In the months since Troy's divorce finalized, he'd shown up consistently, not just for Austin and Maya, but for the messy, complicated work of co-parenting with Vivian. He attended Christopher's soccer games, split holidays fairly, never spoke badly about his ex-wife in front of the children. He'd become the man she'd once believed he could be. "Naomi," Troy turned to face her fully, "I need to tell you something. If this is about switching weekends again, I love you." The words came out raw, unpolished. "I never stopped loving you. And I finally understand what I lost 9 years ago. Not just a wife. Not just the chance to be a father. I lost the only person who ever loved me for who I was, not what I could provide." Naomi's hands tightened around her coffee mug. "Troy, I'm not asking you to forgive me," he continued quickly. "I'm not even asking for a second chance right now. I just need you to know that every day I show up for our children, I'm also showing up for the chance, however small, that you might one day trust me again." Tears blurred Naomi's vision. "You hurt me in ways I didn't think I could survive. I know. You made me believe I was worthless. You were never worthless. I was just too blind and arrogant to see your value." Troy's voice cracked. "But I see it now, Naomi. I see the brilliant surgeon who saves lives. The incredible mother who raised 2 amazing children alone. The woman who had every reason to let me die on that operating table, but saved me anyway. I took an oath. You're a better person than I ever was." He reached for her hand tentatively. When she didn't pull away, his fingers closed gently around hers. "I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm asking anyway. Will you let me try to earn your trust again? Not to fix what I broke, but to build something new." Naomi looked at their intertwined hands, then at the 3 children laughing together on her lawn. Troy's children, all of them, in different ways. "1 year," she said finally. "Intentional dating. Therapy for both of us. And if you hurt me again, if you make our children feel unwanted for even a second, I won't. I swear on everything I am, I won't." 1 year later. The proposal came at Santino's, the Italian restaurant where they'd had their first date 15 years ago. Troy went down on one knee, with Austin and Maya's permission, Christopher grinning beside him with the ring box. "Marry me again," Troy said simply. "Not because it makes sense socially or financially. Marry me because I love you completely, messily, and forever." Naomi said yes. The wedding was small, just family and close friends in Naomi's backyard under string lights. Austin walked his mother down the aisle while Maya scattered rose petals. Christopher served as ring bearer, already beloved by his half-siblings. As they exchanged vows, real ones this time, written from scarred hearts that had learned what love actually cost, Troy looked at his wife and felt something he'd never experienced in his first marriage or with Vivian. Peace. Completeness. Home. 5 years later. Maya stood at her high school graduation as valedictorian, her speech about second chances and the strength of single mothers bringing the audience to tears. Austin, home from MIT's business program, beamed from the front row beside Christopher, now 12 and already showing signs of Maya's artistic talent. Troy and Naomi sat together, his arm around her shoulders, watching their blended family with quiet wonder. "We have everything that matters," Naomi whispered. Troy kissed her temple. "We always did. I was just too stupid to see it. From worthless to irreplaceable. From broken to whole. Naomi hadn't just survived, she'd thrived. And in doing so, she taught everyone around her that your value isn't determined by people who couldn't see it. Sometimes the greatest gifts come from our greatest losses. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are capable of the most profound change. And sometimes love really can conquer all. Not the easy love of compatible strangers, but the hard-won love of two people who've seen each other at their worst and chosen to believe in each other's best. From worthless to irreplaceable. From broken to whole. Naomi didn't just survive, she thrived. If this story reminded you that your value isn't determined by people who couldn't see it, smash that like button. Subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles for more stories about resilience, redemption, and second chances. And comment below, what's the biggest lesson you're taking from Naomi's journey? I do read every single comment. See you in the next story.